Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to Newstos. And something that Microsoft is considering could actually end up changing the entire game industry. This is actually quite a shift for Xbox, and if they do end up doing this, then we could start to see a trickle effect over to PlayStation and Nintendo as well, so make sure to stay tuned for all of that. Unfortunately, we also have a big PlayStation 5 delay to talk about today, which is always something you don't necessarily want to hear, but oftentimes this is necessary, so we will go over all of that as well. To start this video off, though, we will be talking about Metroid once again. Of course, Metroid Dread did launch last week, and fans and critics both seem to be absolutely loving this game. And, well, it's for good reason. It's just a flat-out really good game. I did finally get the chance to play it myself, though I haven't played it a ton, but from what I have played of this game, it is a great 2D Metroid game. It really is that successor that we have always dreamt of. But interestingly enough, this has had a huge effect on past Metroid games as well over on other platforms such as the Nintendo Wii U and the 3DS. Yeah, check this out. The success of Metroid Dread has led to Metroid Fusion being the #1 game over on Wii U eShop. Metroid Zero Mission is #2, Metroid Prime Trilogy is #7, and then #9 is Super Metroid. And then over on the 3DS, #3 is Metroid Samus Returns. So that is actually quite cool, and this is exactly what you want to see from the Metroid franchise. This is one thing that we have talked a lot about this year, that yes, unfortunately, Metroid has never really been this just huge behemoth of a franchise for Nintendo. In terms of quality, it's absolutely amazing, and fans are finally starting to see that, but that's kind of the thing. We need Metroid to be successful so we start to see more of these Metroid games in the future, and I think Nintendo, they have to be really happy right now, both with Metroid Dread as well as this resurgence for older Metroid games as well. I do need to say one thing though, if you do decide to go back and play some of the older Metroid games, I would actually recommend starting off with Metroid Zero Mission, which is the first game in chronological order. This is a remake of the first game, and in terms of gameplay, it sits right at the top alongside Super Metroid. Now, we do have another classic franchise to go over today, being Final Fantasy. And well, that's because we've now gotten some details on the most profitable Final Fantasy game of all time. And I think for a lot of people, they'd probably assume that'd be Final Fantasy VII, as that's probably the most renowned Final Fantasy game ever. But, well, actually, this will be for Final Fantasy XIV. It has now been confirmed as the most profitable entry in the entire series, though I don't really necessarily think that that's overly surprising, considering this is an MMO-style game with a monthly subscription. So this game has been out for 11 years, so, you know, they've made a lot of money off of that subscription service, though. What I will say about Final Fantasy XIV is that this has got to be the best turnaround that I have ever seen for any video game ever. It really is just absolutely amazing what they've been able to achieve with this game. I mean, when this game first came out, it had like a Metacritic score of, I think it was like 49 or something, and it was considered just this major, massive flop. It was terrible, but they didn't give up on it, and they actually re-released it, and, well, the rest is history. They've done a fantastic job, and it's been very successful ever since, and in fact, they did announce that it's now reached 24 million players. So just kudos to Square Enix on all the success that they've had with Final Fantasy XIV. And it does sound like that they have plenty more in store for this game going forward. Obviously, they have that big Endwalker expansion on November 23rd for next month, but then also, I mean, they did say quite a long time ago that this game was also going to be heading over to Xbox. So there's still some big things happening in the near future as well as the long term. Unfortunately, though, we do need to talk about a big PlayStation delay today. I know this has been a common thread all year long, as game after game has been delayed in the year of 2021. Hey, the beginning of 2022 sounds absolutely excellent, but yeah, unfortunately, we have gotten a lot of delays this year, and this time does affect a PlayStation console exclusive, being Solar Ash. Solar Ash was actually a pretty highly anticipated PlayStation game, which we'll get back to here in just a second, but it was originally set for an October 26th release, but with this last-minute delay, it's now set for December 2nd. That's not a major delay or anything like that, it's just a little bit over 1 month, but nonetheless, I know that there will be some disappointment that follows any kind of delay. Though, it's always important to keep in mind that delays are oftentimes just necessary. these developers, they don't want to delay their game. It's more that they need to delay the game to ensure the highest quality when it does eventually release. In a message to the community, they did note that they need a bit more time to get the last pieces of polish and bug fixes into the game, so this will only ensure a better overall end product. And that's the thing about Solar Ash. This game is being developed by Heart Machine, which is the studio behind Hyper Light Drifter. Now, I've said on this channel quite a few times, if you've paid attention to my top 10 videos, that Hyper Light Drifter is right now one of the better independent games on the market. It's a fantastic game with a beautiful art style, it's got great combat, and just in terms of overall game design, it's excellent. So right there is the reason that fans are excited about Solar Ash, which does carry over that art style, though this game kind of reminds me of a 3D Sonic game. The way they do describe this game is that it's a fast-paced 3D platformer, and even the movement in this game kind of reminds me a little bit of Shadow the Hedgehog, so it does give me some Sonic Adventures 2 vibes, just a little bit. Once again, though, I mean, we are seeing yet another really good-looking 3D platformer game that's releasing in the year of 2021, even though it is being slightly delayed. I mean, 3D platformers are just making a big comeback, and like I was saying before, Heart Machine is a good studio, and they proved that with Hyper Light Drifter, and I'm really excited to see what they do with Solar Ash. Again, I know it's disappointing to see a delay like this, but if it's necessary, then by all means, take your time to make the best possible game that you can. Again, it will now release on December 2nd. Moving on, though, we need to talk about Xbox, or actually Microsoft to be more specific, because they are considering to make a pretty big change that could actually affect the entire game industry. And that is the right to repair. Now, the way this works currently right now is that if your Xbox breaks, you then have to send that console back to Microsoft to be repaired. Now, you can choose to try to repair it yourself, but if you open up your Xbox or Nintendo Switch or PlayStation, whatever that may be, you will then void your warranty. So even if you know how to repair it and you do it properly, well, you still open it up, and that means that you voided your warranty. And because of that, it always scares people. Even if they're knowledgeable about the situation, it does scare them to open up their consoles. It almost feels like backwards thinking, because, I mean, you do own these consoles, so shouldn't you have the right to repair it yourself? But at the same time, these companies, they try to protect themselves in multiple situations, because unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there, they don't necessarily know what they're doing, and then they try to repair it themselves, and they do more damage to the console than actually, fix it. So that's one reason that a company might decide to not let consumers repair their own consoles. Some companies also make money off of repair, so there's that as well. But obviously, from the consumer's perspective, the pro-consumer thing here would be to just have rights to repair. If something happens to your product, you can open it up and try to repair it yourself, or send it to a third party and have them repair it for you. In a situation like that, it could actually be quicker than sending your product over to Microsoft themselves and have them repair it and then send it right back to you. That could take weeks and weeks, whereas if you just take it to a local shop and have them repair it, you can have it done in a day. So options like that is very beneficial for the consumer. And well, it does sound like Microsoft right now is actually currently considering just that. If you take a look over here, it's being said Microsoft has now made an agreement with a non-profit investor group called As You Sow, agreeing to hire an independent firm with an intention to study the possibilities and advantages of repairing one's own devices. Microsoft will be publishing a summary of results obtained from these studies sometime in 2022. Now, the first thing you need to understand is that this does not guarantee rights to repair, but it does, at the very least, show that they are currently considering it. You have to keep in mind that a lot of people within Microsoft are probably very against this idea, because this can have some ramifications on the company. But if they do decide to allow this, that means that the general public will have access to spare parts and repair documents made from Microsoft. And this, of course, does affect Xbox very specifically. So that is actually really big right there. And one of the reasons for that is because if Microsoft does allow this and Xbox has the right to repair, then it does put pressure on other companies to do as well. I mean, you have to consider that Microsoft is one of the biggest companies in the entire world. So this would put pressure on other companies such as Nintendo and PlayStation to do similar things. And I mean, on Nintendo's side, this would be very beneficial, especially with the Joy-Con controller. That thing is very infamous to have stick drift. And I mean, we've already seen a lot of people open up their Joy-Cons to fix it themselves. And if we have better access to fix those, then yeah, sign me on. The same thing could be said for the Xbox Elite Series 2 controller, which has had some problems in the past. And again, if we have better access to the parts to actually fix that controller, then yeah, that is absolutely fantastic for consumers. With that said, I mean, like I said before, just kind of keep in mind that nothing is guaranteed as of this moment. Everything right now is still up in the air, so we're just going to have to kind of wait and see what happens next year when they publish their results. Moving on, let's talk about It Takes Two real quick, as this is a game that released earlier this year and it's still heavily in the mix as being a legitimate Game of the Year candidate. This is one of the most creative games I've ever played, and I'm so happy to see them be heavily rewarded for that, as Hazelight has now confirmed that It Takes Two has officially sold more than 3 million units worldwide. And I can honestly say that this game is just so well deserving of that, and for that matter, I think it deserves way more than 3 million units sold. I really enjoyed how they announced this though, because if you take a look at their post, Hazelight said this: 3 million units sold. The thought of so many people enjoying our game is humbling and heartwarming. You all have helped send a clear message. Co-op adventures are here to stay. And it's that last line right there that I find to be so interesting, because keep in mind that It Takes Two is a mandatory cooperative game. Now, for some people, that might be a bit of concern, but they counteract this by giving you a free friend pass, which means that you can invite any of your friends online to play with you completely free of charge. They're not going to have to buy a second copy of the game. You can just invite them and play together, and that's a great way of handling a game like this. So even though that 3 million units have been sold, well, technically, at least double the amount of players have actually played. So we're at least talking about 6 million people who have played It Takes Two. And this is something that I did talk about a few days back. Not every game needs to be a single-player game. I feel like some people kind of act like single-player games are the be-all, end-all, and we've been seeing this for years and years. A multiplayer game comes out and it doesn't have single-player, so much of the community gets really mad about that, and the same thing happens with cooperative games. We just saw that with Back 4 Blood. It comes out, and I've seen a few reviews kind of pick on it for not being a great single-player game, but its main focus was always co-op. So yeah, I just think that as long as you're good at what you try to focus on, that's all that really matters. That's just my opinion. But when it comes to It Takes Two, this legitimately is one of the best cooperative games that I've ever played. And to this day, it's still in the mix of my Game of the Year candidates. I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that later this year, but It Takes Two is an excellent overall game. Let's go ahead and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and one thing is becoming very clear when it comes to this generation for Xbox, and that is that they are quickly becoming an RPG factory. They have a lot of big RPGs in development, whether that be over at Obsidian, Bethesda, or even Playground Games with Fable. So I thought I'd ask you all, which upcoming Xbox RPG are you most excited for? And well, it does seem like the runaway winner here would be Starfield with 42%, while Fable took second place at 26%, Avowed got 21%, and The Outer Worlds 2 got 7%. Now, I am a little surprised that The Outer Worlds 2 didn't get more votes here, just because the first game, a lot of fans really liked that one, so I kind of figured that that one would have gotten more votes than it did, but I definitely understand why Starfield won here. Bethesda is well known for making some of the most beloved RPGs of all time, whether that be Skyrim or Fallout, and this is their first new RPG in a very, very long time. So without a doubt, fans are going to be really excited about Starfield, which will be releasing next year in 2022. Hopefully we're going to see some gameplay of that one here soon. I have to say though, out of all the games on this list, I think that Avowed is probably the one that interests me the most, just because Obsidian, they've always been really good with RPGs, and based off of that most recent leak, It really does sound like this game is quite ambitious. I'm really interested to see how that one turns out. And even Fable, I've never really been a huge Fable fan or anything like that, but Fable is a beloved Xbox RPG, and Playground Games, they do an excellent job with Forza Horizon, and I want to see how that second studio does with a big RPG like this. Like I said before though, Xbox just has a lot of these big RPGs in development, and if you are a fan of this genre, definitely some exciting times ahead, to say the least. Anyways though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.